And I would like to welcome everyone and good evening, good morning, wherever you are in the world. Um, so we are the Student Society TEDxESCPBerlin, and we have one mission, is to broaden the scope of discussions, sharing and spreading ideas. So today we are the 25th of March. We will have our public speaking workshop with Pascal, and I thank you very much, Pascal, for accepting our invitation. We already had one previous workshop in February, and this current workshop is to prepare you for a competition that will be held on the 8th of April. And so you will be, with the help of Pascal, be able to be part, hopefully, to our TEDx conference that will be held beginning of May. So I invite you to follow us on our Instagram page or LinkedIn page, but we also have added here a QR code where you can stay in touch and updated with our events or our content on WhatsApp. So if you just scan this QR code, you will get access to all our information. Thank you very much and enjoy this workshop.
Thank you, Clara, for the quick intro, and please feel free to scan this QR code, and then we go from there. Obviously, we're going to share the joining link soon as well. And this being said, please welcome Pascal Heyman officially as well. International distinguished speaking trainer who empowers CEOs, academics, inspiring speakers to confidentially communicate their ideas and generate the interest for innovative products, and all with the wow effect created. Pascal has already coached TEDxUniPotsdam before, and this time it's our turn. And I wish you all a great workshop that will enrich all of your existing skills.
All right, good evening, everyone, and welcome to our session today. We are here because many years ago, a man named Harry Marx had a brilliant idea. In 1984, he realized that technology and innovation in general was moving into an interesting direction. New technologies that sprung up and new innovations that were made, they seemed to come together at the intersection of technology, entertainment, and design. And he looked at that trend and he realized this is going to continue. And it's something that we should be speaking about. This is where the future of great new ideas lies. And so together with Richard Werman, he created the first TED conference, TED, Technology, Entertainment, Design. And at this first conference, there are quite some cool things that were being presented. The compact disc was demoed there. There are a few 3D new rendering graphic technologies that were shown there. Quite some technological breakthroughs. And that conference used to be quite an exclusive club. People paid thousands of dollars to participate and to hear the top speakers in their respective fields share, well, their big ideas, new concepts, technological breakthroughs, and even social issues. And in the early 2000s, that conference, that exclusive conference, was finally made available to the general public. The videos were posted online and they were a huge success. People just devoured TED Talks. Nowadays, TED Talk or TED is pretty much the gold standard for presentations and public speaking. And it still revolves around that central concept that in technology, entertainment, design, there are ideas that are worth sharing, but not just necessarily in those three fields. TED has become so much more. And the reason that I enjoy working with TED or TEDx speakers so much is because I share that same idea. I share that same mantra that I think every one of us has ideas that are worth sharing. Each one of us has a voice that deserves to be heard, stories that are worth being told. And so being able to support this platform is an honor and a pleasure for me. And that's why I'm here speaking to you today, helping you crystallize your idea, finding your concept, finding your message, and figuring out what is it that you have to share with the world that fits onto this TED stage. And that already brings us to, well, the question, what do we need for a successful TED Talk? What do we need in order to create an amazing talk that will captivate the audience and that will be memorable, and when posted on YouTube, get millions of hits and change people's lives? There are a few ingredients, and we're going to look at those ingredients in detail now. The very first one is the theme. Your talk needs some sort of theme. This is the overarching umbrella that ties together all the different talks. This theme is one that's given by the event organizers themselves. And we are going to use a tool throughout the session here called WooClap, and Rishi is going to share a slide in just a few seconds to send you to that tool. And once we have those instructions, what I'd like you to do is I'd like you to just answer the first question. What is the theme of this year's TEDxESCPBerlin conference? A simple question to get us started with. What is the theme of this year's conference? Is it Into the Unknown, New Vision and Perspective, or is it Exploring the Mundane, Outdated Topics and Prejudices? And I see most people are going for option number one, but I see not everyone has decided yet, so I'll give them just a few more seconds. The majority of you has picked the correct answer. Yes, it is Into the Unknown, New Visions and Perspectives. And this is important because everything that will happen at this TEDx event will be fitting under that umbrella. Every talk, every new idea, every concept should be somewhat geared towards the theme of Into the Unknown, of new visions and perspectives. It's not that I doubt that you have tons of ideas for this. It's just something to keep in mind. The next thing we need for our TED Talk is a topic. And if you grab your phone again and stay with WooClap, which you've just opened, and go to answer the next question, and Rishi, if we could, thank you. Question number 2. What are possible topics for your talk at TEDxESCPBerlin? Under that theme, what are topics that could be chosen for your talk?
Can we choose more than one, or it's
You
only
can
one?
choose more than one, correct.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, we still have a few answers coming in. There are some favorites, some clear favorites. The winners are urban planning, spirituality, women in business, marketing, and the cosmos. All the answers here are correct. The topic can be pretty much anything. These are all topics that are even suggested by the TED organization themselves. The topic can be anything that you know something about, that you're experienced in, that you're passionate about, and that you want to speak about. In the end, it's all a question of how do we create a message that fits under the theme, but we'll get to that in just a second. And because I realized there are a lot of people sitting in this seminar still not sure what exactly to speak about, not sure what exactly their TED Talk could be about, what even the topic could be, we're going to do a little exercise. I want everyone to grab pen and paper, just a normal piece of paper and a pen. And I'm going to give you a few minutes to make a list of 2 things. On the right-hand side, I want you to write down all the things that you are an expert in, all the things that you know a lot about. And in the other column on the left side, I want you to write about all the things that you're passionate about, that are important to you, all the topics that you care about. And feel free to give yourself a bit of time. Even if you have already chosen a topic to speak about, this will allow you to maybe even gain a new perspective or come up with an idea for your second TED Talk. So just a few minutes, take a pen and paper, make those two lists. On the right, what are you experienced in? What do you know a lot about? And on the left, what are you passionate about? Just anything that comes to mind. All right, I know some of you are sitting there and thinking, I can't come up with any more. And to you, I say, take that list, keep it. You'll be able to expand that at another point. There's always topics that are going to come to you at a later stage. I know there's others that are saying, no, I still need time to write. Don't worry, you can finish that list later. But now you already have a good list, a good idea, a good collection of things, of possible topics that you could speak about in your TED Talk. Because this is a very important aspect. As a speaker, you should know something about the topic you're speaking on, and it should be something that you care about. So if you have any topics that are identical in both of the columns, then, well, those are good indications that this might be something for you to think about speaking about. If you have something in the column of you're passionate about it, but you don't know that much about it yet, well, the good thing is you can always do your research and find out more. If there's something you know a lot about, but you're not very passionate about it, maybe it's not a great topic to choose for your TED Talk. Because if you're not passionate about it, then the audience probably isn't going to be that passionate about it either. But those are just two of the things we need. The theme, a topic, but now comes the actual interesting part. Now comes almost the meat of why we're doing this, why we're getting up on stage, why we're presenting. And that is the purpose. Every speaker has a purpose, a goal. Every time I go on a stage and I give a presentation, it's because I want to make a change in the world for the better in one small aspect of existence. Purpose is what drives us to change the world. It's us looking at what's out there, realizing there's a change we want to make, and then going ahead and acting out on that. It's our, Simon Sinek calls it the why. It's our motivator. It's, well, our purpose. And the purpose is really at the heart of any presentation as well. Whenever we speak, we're giving the audience value. We're trying to help them overcome some sort of problem, some sort of issue, some sort of struggle. And we'll get into why that's important later in the storytelling bit on how to put everything together and identify the storyline. When we want to change the world, it's because we want to change something that's, for us, unideal into a state of it being ideal. And so we need to focus on what is that current state? What is the status quo that we want to address? And so I want you to take that list that you have of your topics, the things you're passionate about and the things you know a lot about, and think, well, what in this list, in which of these topics do I want to change something? Where is a problem that either I experience, that my audience experiences, or that the world at large experiences? I can give you an example. The last TED conference that I was doing the training for, one of the speakers, his topic was slavery, modern slavery. And I think the purpose there is quite obvious. One of the issues was that modern slavery is a huge and gigantic industry, even today, way larger than it was back then, with higher revenue and I also believe profit than Apple, Facebook, Google, and co. all combined together. And so the purpose here was to create awareness in order to assure that we consume in a way that stifles the use of modern slavery. So that's quite an extreme example, right? Not everyone is trying to tackle the problem of modern slavery, but it's just a good example for starting to think about purpose. What is the purpose? The purpose, for instance, of the seminar right here is to help people who want to give a talk, who want to go on that TED stage, but don't quite know how to do that yet. People who struggle to put together a TED talk, or maybe a bit afraid of public speaking, and to give those courage and self-confidence to give their talk. Not quite as noble and large as raising awareness for modern slavery, or about modern slavery, not for modern slavery, but still a purpose. So I want you, again, to take a few minutes and make a list of your purposes. What are things that you want to change in this world? What are things that annoy you, that irritate you, that hurt others, that you'd like to eradicate and that you'd like to be a part of the solution for? And just take a few minutes and write those down for yourself. Now that you have at least one of those purposes, we're going to go into breakout rooms, and I want you to share your topic and your purpose with someone else. We're going to go in groups of 2. You're going to have 5 minutes to talk about what is your purpose, why do you want to talk about this topic, what is there so important about it for you personally, and then give each other feedback on whether you understand that purpose, of whether it's clearly communicated. Because I've had the experience when writing speeches, for instance, I had this idea, well, that I have this purpose in mind, and then I write the speech and I talk to people about it and they don't quite understand the problem at all. And so kind of the work of creating that speech was wasted, because I need to go back, rewrite the problem, and that rewrites the whole speech. So Rishi will send you into groups of 2 in any moment, and you'll have a few minutes to discuss your purpose, your motivation behind it, and whether or not it makes sense to the other person, and how you can phrase it in a way that does. Welcome back with just a few thumbs up who can show, hey, we had really good purposes. And yes, even 2 thumbs. Fantastic. Right, so we have the theme, we have a topic, we have a purpose, and now we come to the last, well, second to the last ingredient we need for a good TED Talk. This is really where those things come together, and that is the message and the idea. And I hope I can do that without ripping apart this flip chart. Yes. Our message and idea. This is the core of any talk. It's the one thing that the audience will take away, after they leave. It's if their friend asks them, "Hey, what did you learn today? What was so cool about this talk?" This is what they'll answer. If they were to tweet about your talk, this is what they would be putting into the tweet. It's the idea worth sharing. It's the one concept. It's the new breath to the topic and to the purpose that you are able to provide. And identifying those can be a bit tricky sometimes a bit easier. So we're going to do a quick exercise. I want you to grab your phones again and answer the following question. See if you can identify what are possible messages for a TED Talk, for a talk at this conference under this theme. And again, you can choose multiple answers, select the answers, and then click submit. Multiple answers can be selected. So everyone agrees that I like watching birds is not a fitting message. Seems we have no bird watchers among us here today. So I was looking for two answers. The first one being that we must steer the wheel of adaptation if we want to avoid disastrous impact of new emerging technologies. I don't know what that means. It's a lot of businessy innovation buzzword, but it has the structure, it has the content of what a message is about, a new idea. Same as the personalized e-education is the first step towards driving greater growth. That is something that would fit within a theme of what we have here, into the future. The oceans are polluted. That is true, but that is neither a new idea, unless someone is proposing, hey, we should pollute oceans a bit more. It is nothing novel in its concept, and it's just a statement of fact, really. It's just look at the status quo saying, hey, this is the way it is. A message carries something new. A message challenges what the audience already knows. It challenges the way that the audience perceives the world, because that's what TED Talks do. TED Talks don't tell us what we already know. Any good presentation will leave the audience with something that they didn't have before. That kind of shakes their worldview just enough to cause a shift in perspective, but not too much that people become rigid and say, no, I don't want to hear any more of this. There's always a small violation of their worldview. And so we need some new innovation. We need some new idea. We need something in the message that makes people go, oh yeah, I've not considered that aspect yet. I've not looked at it in this certain way. And so the oceans are polluted. It's a great fact. It's a topic, I guess, but it wouldn't be fit as a message. We need a bit more than that. We need that unique thing that only you can give. And I realize that at this stage now, there's going to be a few of you who know what their topic is about, that already have an idea for the talk itself. But there's also going to be a few who are still wondering, wait, I don't quite know what to make of this yet. And that's completely normal. Usually we don't find these answers just within 30 minutes, just because someone said, write down a few words on a piece of paper. And so no matter if you're person A, type A, or type B, you'll be able to bring everything you have together in the next ingredient and the next part. And this is really what sets a lot of TED Talks apart from normal business presentations. And that is the storyline. This is the part that's memorable about your talk. This is not just a great tool for conveying information, it's also a great tool for identifying the information that you're going to share in your TED Talk. And why are storylines so important? Well, stories are how we connect. Stories are how we share experiences. Stories are how we actually experience the world around us. Every day you get up and things happen to you, and then because of the thing you do in the morning, the things in the evening occur. It's all a continuous cycle of action and reaction. Your whole life is one big story. And so we naturally think in stories anyway. We don't think in data. We don't think in facts and figures. We think in terms of stories. What's fantastic and fascinating about stories is that if I tell you a personal story, then you will start reliving that in your head as well. It's one of the reasons that I personally can't watch horror films, because I feel the same horror and the same fear that the people in the movie feel. Just because I see the scenario and it's playing in my head and feels like I'm in there. It's why action movies are so exciting and they bring our adrenaline up. It's why romantic movies make us sad and cry. It's why when I watched Titanic for the first time, I think I was like 8 years old, I cried because it was just so moving. And I've not watched it since because I didn't want that to happen again. So yeah, stories are powerful. Stories make us relive what we're hearing. And by reliving what we're hearing, we're able to remember it a lot better. Information sticks in our head much better if it's part of a story. I'll give you just one simple, maybe mundane example, but I'm pretty sure most of you here know that the Hogwarts Express is on platform 9¾ That's part of a fascinating, tantalizing story. But then again, most of you who live in Berlin and take the German or the BVG, the Berlin public transport regularly, maybe not now during Corona, but before that, probably don't know whether the S42 goes clockwise or counterclockwise. Same type of information, right? There's a train, there's platform number or numbers, but we don't know these things. If it was part of a story, if the S42 and the S41 were parts of stories, we'd be able to remember them so much better. It's the same for all types of data. So same for all types of information that we're trying to remember. If it's in the story, it's easier. It's been great experiments with people selling objects and being able to sell them on eBay for a much higher price if there's a story attached, because stories make us feel, stories pull us in, and stories move us. And that's why every great talk, every great TED Talk is a bit like a story and incorporates stories. But that's also why if we look at stories, we're able to identify, well, what we need for our talk, because we look at what a story needs, and then we look at the things we know, we look at our topic and the purpose, and boom, we have all the ingredients. So let's have a look at that. In case you don't have an idea yet. If you go to Google and you search for how to tell a story or storytelling frameworks, you're going to get a lot of results. You're going to see the hero's journey, for instance, that's often spoken about in storytelling books. The hero's journey has these 13, I believe it's 13 steps that a hero takes, and it's always explained with the example of Star Wars, how Luke Skywalker goes through these 13 steps. I professionally tell stories. I have been with stories in the radio. I work with professionals, business professionals, to tell better stories in their pitches and presentations. I do storytelling seminars, and I don't, honestly to God, know all those 13 steps. I couldn't tell them, if you put a gun to my head. They're not intuitive. They make sense when you read them, right? When you have a large text and you read 13 steps, you go, oh yeah, right, that makes sense. But it's not something to use that quickly and on the spot for creating a talk. Now, it turns out those 13 steps of a hero are quite nice in movies that go for 1.5 hours, but they usually don't translate well into short presentations, and they don't reflect the way that life actually works. Then there's a few simpler methods, like the 8-step story circle by Dan Harmon, brilliant storyteller, creator of Community and Rick and Morty. I love his story circle, has 8 steps, a lot easier to remember, still a bit too complicated and theoretical for what we want to do here. Then there's the Pixar method and all these types of approaches to storytelling. There's one I use when I create my own stories. That's just 6 bits that I bring together at some point. But what we really need for a story are just 3 basic things. To understand what a story is, it's just 3 basic ideas. We need a conflict. This is at the heart of of every story. We need a conflict. We need some value X. Something plus that conflict equals a resolution. A story is the journey from us being in a stuck state to achieving a goal, or at least getting out of that conflict. And this X, this is oftentimes our idea, it's our message, it's the new concept, it's what helps us achieve our goals, it's what helps us get out of the slump and achieve new heights. So this is really the interesting part of the story. I mean, they're all interesting, they're all important, but this is our secret sauce. This is where our idea worth sharing comes in. And conflict is at the heart of each story because perfection is boring. And this is why when you go up on stage, people don't want to hear about all the amazing, successful things you've done without ever running into a problem, because there's nothing we can learn from that. We can only learn from people going through their conflicts and arriving at a resolution. And as I said, there's different approaches to creating stories, different theories. And one that I really like is Kurt Vonnegut calls them like the shapes of stories. And he basically, he uses this axis from fortune to misfortune along the axis of time. And what we can do with this axis is we can plot our conflicts and our resolutions. We can plot the episodes in our life or in our protagonist's life if we're speaking about someone else, but I'll get into that in a sec, and see what happens. So I'm going to give you an example, the following. Public speaking is my job now, but I didn't used to be very good at doing this. I used to hate this. In school, I mean, as a kid, I was quite neutral, so I'm going to plot my fortune and misfortune, my confidence in public speaking, and me enjoying public speaking here. A few events. Now, I started doing presentations in school. That didn't go well. People didn't listen to me. I was quite nervous when speaking up there. And I did more presentations, and each time it got worse. It got worse and worse and worse. I even had a point where I was standing on stage as part of stage crew, making an announcement that it was just going to take a few more minutes until the event starts. And those two sentences that I had to say, I couldn't get them out without forgetting the word patience. Thank you for your patience. I blanked. That was a horrible experience, made it even worse. And then came the lowest point of my public speaking experience and career. And this was the very last exam that we had at school. It was a topic that I was passionate about, was maths and physics. I know not a lot of people here will share that passion, but it went horribly wrong. I failed, and I was in the guts. I was in the gutters. My physics teacher told me that was the most uninspiring and the most mundane presentation she's ever seen. She's a physics teacher, so she's seen a lot. That was horrible. So when I was at university, I ended up studying physics anyway. When I was at university, I decided I need to change something. So I started attending public speaking seminars and courses and clubs. And I gave my first speeches and realized, hey, things are getting better. It's not that bad. It doesn't hurt that much. I started participating in public speaking competitions. Also won some of them. I did more competitions until eventually it was suggested to me that I maybe turn this hobby that was already quite positive for me into a career. And so I did that. I started giving my first workshops. I had my first clients. And then I had a client meeting. Let's just say it didn't go so well. And it almost caused an international incident involving the French embassy. That was not a great moment for me. It was one of those dips, one of those darker times. But I recovered from that. I did more competitions, and eventually I was able to turn it into a full-time professional career. And now I get to give this workshop for TEDxESCP. And so this is kind of my plot for my public speaking journey and my public speaking discovery. And when we're talking about storytelling, when we're talking about content for talk, what we really want to look at is the things down here, the dark sides. Mythology, for instance, there's a reason we have so many stories about the Greek gods. It's not because they're perfect, it's because they all had some flaws that caused major conflicts, major issues for not just the gods, but also the people on earth. Perfection is boring. As an audience, we want to hear about those dark times. We want to hear about those moments where, you know, either the speaker was down or someone else wasn't doing well. Obviously, we don't want to stay down there. We also want to hear about the nice moments, but this is where the meat of the presentation is, the meat of the story is. And if we put a shape through, right, this would be the shape of my public speaking journey. And the powerful bit, what we want to look at, is the amplitude between these spots, right? It's going from feeling down to going up. If I told a story just about this section, then this would be the impact, the emotional impact of my story. I could also just tell a story about this part. I could tell a longer story like I did right now. And so the greater that amplitude is, the more impactful our story is going to be for the audience. And so what I want you to do is I want you to take that piece of paper. I want you to create this axis from, you know, feeling good, feeling bad, fortune, misfortune over time for your topic. And if you don't have a topic yet, you can do this for your life. I generally recommend doing this for your life anyway, plotting all the good things that happen to you and all the bad things, and seeing what interesting things come up in the bottom that might be linked to some of the things in the top that would make a great story. Because these sections, this X, is where the wisdom lies. So everyone, grab that piece of paper, plot your successes and your failures, your down moments and your up moments, and see what the
I have a question.
Yes.
Sorry. If my topic I had in mind is not something I personally experienced, and should I not talk about it, or like I don't know how to make this curve if I didn't experience it, but it's something I'm passionate about.
Someone has experienced it. And
yeah, someone.
I was gonna get into this a bit later, but I'll answer the question now. So in your talk, maybe these positive things haven't happened yet, but they can happen. And so when we give a talk, for instance, about an issue that exists in this moment, then we are trying to create a picture of a world where this issue doesn't exist anymore, and we're offering a solution on how to get there. So you may not have reached these heights before, or the people involved may not have reached these heights before. We as a society, as a world, may not have reached these positive bits before, but you're still giving us an outlook on what they would be and how we can get there. So these things don't necessarily need to have happened, the positive ones. Does that answer the question?
Okay, thanks. So it doesn't have to be like really a personal experience.
It doesn't need to be a personal experience. It's always, it's more impactful when it is, if you have some personal connection to it, but it doesn't necessarily need to be, no.
Okay, thank you.
So yeah, take a few minutes and create that line for yourself. you'll notice there are some things that you know would belong on this bottom part of the chart, but you kind of have the feeling, no, it's maybe too personal, it's too dark, it's too far down there. Put it on anyway. Don't filter yourself. There's one of my favorite TED Talk openings was a sentence, yeah, I was 13, or I was a teenager the first time I tried to kill myself. You immediately knew, wow, this is going to be a personal, it's going to be a dark, emotionally taxing talk, but it was worth it. The deeper we go in these bits, the more value we're going to pull out of it, the more impact we're going to have. So yeah, take that chart that you have now and think about the connections between each of these parts. Think about which height difference, which amplitude you would like to speak about, which you can use. And if you already had your topic and your purpose and your message, well, now you know what you need to look out for. You need to look for the lowest points in that journey and the highest points. And if that journey has not completed yet, if you are here right now, well, then we want to know what the outlook is. We want to know what can still happen here. And we'll look at the different types of TED Talks in just a second and how this applies to them. And if you didn't have your topic, your message, and your purpose yet, then hopefully you'll be able to identify it with this, where you say, hey, there's this dark moment, or there's this negative thing that I know a lot about. And I also know how to get away from there, or have an idea on how to solve that. So you can put that aside and use that later to craft the details of your talk. And the question that just came up is actually quite a good one regarding, the outlook. There's a great TED Talk by Nancy Duarte, I believe. Duarte, yeah, always horrible with names. And she says that most presentations and speeches, like the really good ones, they have a similar shape. And that is, they have all some sort of version of talking about how the world how the world is, giving an outlook on how the world could be, and alternating between these two states of presenting the status quo, what the world is like now, usually these lower bits, giving us a taste of what it could be like, going back to what it's like now, giving a taste of what the solution could be like, etc. And again, this what gets us from here to here is that X. It's this part. It's the piece of wisdom. It's the new insight. It's the new research result, whatever it is that you have to offer, that you have to present. And so the question is now, what do we do with this? And what kind of talks can we actually give? And there are a few different types of TED Talks, and not all of them relevant to this theme and this TEDxESCPBerlin conference. But generally, you're going to be choosing between one of these four, the big or small idea, the big idea being something completely revolutionary that no one has ever thought about, that could bring about amazing, astounding change in the world, or in all aspects of some small niche problem. A small idea could be just a new way of looking at a certain issue, a new way of approaching some of the smaller hurdles that we have in life. The tech demo, right? If you've created something, maybe you have a startup or you have this cool new product that you've created, then that's something you can share. I guess that won't apply to so many of the people here. Then there's the issue talk. The issue talk is one of those talks where we can make people aware of an issue in society and economics and whatever field that you are an expert in, whatever your topic is. And that's exactly where we'd be giving this outlook on what could be what life could be like if this issue didn't exist. And so in this issue talk, we are still in the lower part of the storyline graph. And we're kind of looking ahead in an optimistic way. And then there's the dazzling with wonder, which can be something that you're passionate about and that you're really interested in, that maybe doesn't address a specific problem, but it just fascinates you. It's, if you've learned something recently or discovered something, maybe through your research or your work, where you say, wow, this is just cool, then dazzling with wonder is a type of talk that you can give to present this to people. And here, in all of these, we're interested in how did you get to that topic? Why are you involved with it? What is your storyline? What are the low points? When did you hear about a certain issue? How did that affect you? How did it emotionally move you? How did it drag you to the bottom of that storyline graph? And so that's why that graph is so important, because whenever we're talking about something that's important to us, it's because it dragged us down there at some point. And we either want to get up from it and already know how to do it, or we've actually managed it and can now talk about our experience that can help others achieve the same. And so how the question of how do I structure these talks, it almost feels like an obvious thing to say. And for many years, when people told me, well, a presentation has a beginning, middle, and an end, I thought, yeah, no, Sherlock. It turns out, even after several years, I again and again, when thinking about it, understand the concept more and more. So even if you think, okay, I understood beginning, middle, and end, it'll always click again at a later point of why these are so important. This framework by Aristotle that he gave us. And so I want to talk just a bit about each one of these. The beginning is a really central part of any presentation. 30 seconds. You have 30 seconds on average to get an audience's attention, to make sure that they just actively decide to keep on listening to you. I'd argue that in this digital era, it's even a bit less, because we all have our smartphones and everything that we can interact with at any moment. But generally in advertising and public speaking, we talk about 30 seconds. And there's a few ways of getting people's attention effectively and quickly. And I want to share a few with you here, and then we'll look at some examples from existing TED Talks, some of my favorite 30-second openers from other TEDx speakers. So there's a few possibilities. We can, in the beginning, we can pose a question, for instance, throw something out to the audience that they get to think about. We can make a bold statement, something that shakes the worldview of our audience, something that they don't expect. The more unexpected, the better it is. Just something that hits them with surprise. We can start already with storytelling. Bring an anecdote. Hope people are able to read this. Bring an anecdote and pull them in with the story, with action. Or we can even do something on stage, directly go into an action. What we don't want in the beginning is unnecessarily information like who you are, why you're happy to be speaking here, what the name of the conference is and all that. We want to use every second as efficiently as possible. And so Rishi, in just a second, will share 3 cool examples that use these. One of them will be using a question, but paired with an anecdote. One will use an anecdote, or rather telling of something that happened in the past that gets us thinking about a certain issue, that gets us thinking about a certain conflict. And the third one is going to be an interesting, bold statement. were 3 openings that grabbed people's attention. No wasted words, no formalities. Matt Walker in the beginning, he said, well, thank you. That was to indicate to the audience that the applause should die down now. But they went straight into it. They had emotionally moving anecdotes, questions that weren't easy to answer right away. What they did is they brought a conflict to us in the first 30 seconds. So the beginning is really, where we put in the conflict that we have in the story. Equally, the end of a presentation, well, that's where we have our outlook. It's the resolution. It's the resolution. It contains our message. It contains the big idea. And it contains the so-called call to action. What we want our audience to do in order to move from the conflict to the resolution. And what's here in the middle, this is almost the least interesting part. Well, not least interesting, but here you can show us how you moved from the conflict to the resolution. Here's where you can tell your story. Here's where you can tell other people's story. Here's where you can tell us how you found all these answers. Here's how you can tell us how you approached this issue, what you found out about the issue. There's so many cool things and different versatile things that you can do with the middle that if I were to list them all, we'd be here for quite a while. And I don't think it's smart to give people a one-size-fits-all cookie-cutter solution to how to approach this talk. The real important bit for us here in developing a new talk is knowing that we build up the conflict in the beginning, we end up with the resolution with our message and the call to action, and in the middle, we show the audience what happens in between. This is where we put in our anecdotes. This is where we put in our metaphors. This is where we explain how we got to the results. And so I'm curious to see all the creative ways that you'll use to get from A to B. I'd like to answer a simple question. How many words can the average adult read per minute? We have some speed readers in the room. So far, we have everything from 10 words per minute up to 2,000. That is quite a range. And just a few more coming in now. All right, let's see what the answer is. The answer, well, what I was looking for was 250, but anything between 225 and 275 is correct. Seems like no one got it in that range. A lot of people below and a lot of people above that. Yes, the average adult can read about 250 words per minute. Obviously, this is just an average, so you as university students will be a lot faster at reading than, for instance, someone who's been in a non-reading job for 30 years. But it's a good average. And I have one more question for you. So we'll go stick with WooClap on your phone. And I want to know from you, how many words does the average presenter speak per minute? Also, quite a range coming in here. I think the lowest I see so far is 50. The highest we have is, where was it, 500? All right. So you have 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, submit. Let's look at the answer. Between 100 and 150 words per minute. This is the average for North America about. When I create presentations and I write scripts for my presentations, such as you should be doing as well, I always calculate with a maximum of 150, usually 130 to 150. That means that if you're giving a TED Talk, does anyone know how long a TED Talk is allowed to be? What's the maximum?
20 minutes.
40 minutes.
The official one is 18 minutes. If you go above, I believe, 20 or 22 minutes, they're definitely not going to put it up on the website and on YouTube. So there's a time limit there. But 18 minutes is a good target to hit. And so take out your phone and open your calculator app. I think everyone should have a calculator app there. And type in, let's do this together, 18 times 150, that is 2,700 words. When you write the script for your TED Talk, and I urge you to write a script because it's never going to be timed as well on bullet points, you should not exceed 2,700 words. If you have more than 2,700 words, then you know you're going to be above the time. You could even say, hey, I speak a bit slower. So 130, that would be 2,340 words. So your TED Talk should not exceed that. I guess 2,000 is a good length to aim at. Why is this important, though? Why are these two numbers so important for us as speakers? Well, because it tells us something about how we should be using our slides. When we have slides with a lot of text, as we will see in just 1 second popping up, what happens is the following. People start reading this text. Now, I can assure you this slide contains no information that's relevant to the seminar, no information that's relevant to you or this workshop or humanity as a whole. It's just a bunch of nonsense. But I can guarantee about 90% of you are reading it anyway, just because there's slide on text. So people, text on slide, so people will start reading text on a slide. And even if the text on that slide is the same text that you're saying verbally, they will have read it to the end before you've spoken to the end. So it means about, when they finish reading, you're only halfway through telling them what's going to be on there, but they already know it's not going to be new information, it's going to be boring. Even if we go to the next slide, right, and we break things up into bullet points, yeah, makes it a bit easier to read, right? People say, well, walls of text are bad, let's put bullet points, still the same problem. It's still the same text. Chances are many of you are reading through the same text again now, even though I'm telling you right now it's the same text, and it still doesn't apply to any of what we're talking about here. And if we go to the next slide, right, it's condensed information now, still not useful to us. People will still be reading it. People will jump ahead even further, even quickly now, so that if I talked about seriously pay attention, you already know this. What we want to do with slides, if we want to keep people's attention and we want to have an impact, we want to use pictures instead. So after you've read this 3 times now, I want you to look at this picture, and this picture conveys the same information, just in a lot more effective way. If I'd shown you this picture from the very beginning, it would have pretty much covered all of what I'd said before. This is going to stay in your memory a lot longer. This is going to have much more of an impact on you. It's not as distracting. You're able to enjoy that picture and still listen to me and understand what I'm saying. Because even if the things that I'm talking about are in conflict with what's in the picture, you won't notice as much because you're not being distracted by other types of text. And this is especially important when we're doing these online presentations, because people usually see the slide a lot larger and that's what they're going to focus on, but you want the focus to be on yourself. And that's why we're going to close that picture again after we've all seen this cute dog. Put as little text as possible onto your slides. Use pictures whenever you can, and maybe even think about not using slides at all. Because in the end, what matters isn't a great design. What makes your TED Talk fantastic isn't, you know, some funny picture or some insightful image. It's your idea. It's your idea in the spotlight. It's your idea that matters. It's your idea that's worth sharing. And your idea comes from you. And that's where the focus of the talk should be. That's where the focus for the audience should be. And that's where your personal focus should be. And by putting all these things together, by, you know, the theme, the topic, the purpose, the message, and the storyline, you're going to create a talk that is not just worth sharing on social media and all, but that's worth talking about, that will stay in people's memories for a long time, and that will give them a new outlook on life, and hopefully give you a new outlook, maybe on your own experience, and on the way that you go through the world. So I'm looking forward to seeing the talks that arise in the next few weeks that will be present at the competition. And even if you don't manage to get a speaking slot at this conference, you now have everything you need to put together an amazing and memorable talk. And I wish you all the best. And I enjoy seeing you out there changing the world with each TED Talk, with each 18 minutes at a time. Thank you.